Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is the Origination Point podcast, and I'm your host, Bill De La Cruz. And it's really nice to be back with you. I have a really interesting guest for today, and just wanted to remind you that if this content resonates with you, to share it, subscribe, and wanted to let you know that I think I'm going to be starting a whole series on leadership and really looking at what does leadership look like as we move into 24, 25, and beyond. So I'm really excited to share thoughts with you and research with you and just talk about how does leadership impact how we are all working through this crazy divided world that we all live on? So really great to have you here. It's great to be back. And my guest today is Linda Newell, and Linda has a really amazing story and journey. And I'm not going to attempt to share it, so I'm going to jump right in and say, "Hi, Linda. Welcome. How are you today?"
Hi, Bill. I'm great.
Wonderful. It's so nice to have you here. So let's just start with, why don't you introduce yourself and share some of your background about what you've been doing and how you got to what you're doing today.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. I think it's a really fascinating area of work that you're doing, and I'm grateful for that work. So privileged to be
Great.
here. Um, so my pronouns are she/her. My name is Linda Newell. I live on the unceded territory of the Arapaho and Cheyenne peoples. And because of that, I have made a lifelong commitment to be as restorative and in good relation with the land around me. So I wanted to just name all of that up
Great.
front. Um, so as far as me, I'm an older white cis het woman. What can I say? And I've had the privilege of education. I've had the privilege of being in public office. I have been very low economically. I've been on welfare before. I have made six figures before. I've just been all over the place. So my lens comes from a myriad of places because of that. So I have done what I can to kind of blend those and make those as useful as possible for other people.
Great. So we talked a little bit about your personal growth journey. What kind of sparked that? Was there an event or a moment in time where you just wanted to make some changes in your life?
I actually have been in personal growth work and also actually professionally ended up that way back in the
Wow.
80s. Got started in the 80s. I grew up in California, Southern California. And it was the land of personal growth workshops, and all of that work. My father was a clinical psychologist, and so he did a lot of work and Gestalt therapy and did a lot of experimental work. Did work with the astronauts, and my mom was a teacher, and so having those lenses drive us in our home, it really inspired. You can do anything, put your mind to it. You can just have a great mindset about something, and that can change your life. Of course, that's coming from a white
Yeah.
privileged family. So that said, um, and so I really started in personal growth workshops when I was in my late 20s.
Okay.
Um, and it just has continued throughout my life. That said, my reawakening, my birth, I would say, of my newest path of growth for me has been in really due to my daughters. I have two daughters, and both of them started on the journey of looking at their own um, identities, oppression, systems of oppression, anti-racist work, and so both of them started to kind of gnaw at me
Mm,
in my brain and really started to trigger thoughts of wait a second, what is my place in society, what's my accountability, what are my how are my identities intersecting with the work that I do, and what possible harm am I causing and I'm not even conscious of it. So that's kind of what started that path for me. And then I went in and did work with in Colorado, we have the Soul to Soul. You might be aware of them. It's an anti-racist group that helps people work through their own personal
mhm.
intersections of their identities, and really looks. It's founded by two Black women ministers, and so inspiring for me because it's a holistic framework instead of just the academic. Um, and so I ended up going to seminary, which is really weird because I am not a Christian. Um, and and so once I started doing that, I went into a program, my master's in social justice and ethics, and I was 60 years old when I did that, and it really pivoted me. So that's how I went into this kind of work and also this kind of journey of self reflection.
So you've had an awakening and a reawakening, both,
Yes.
um,
Yes.
and just decided that you wanted to do something different. So what were your first steps? I know you spent some time in politics, so let's wherever you want to start in that journey. I'd love to hear some of that because I know in our initial conversation we found a lot of connections both growing up in Southern California. I did a lot of Werner Erhard in Est back in the day, which was I think
Yeah.
that
Okay.
same
Okay.
that was one of my first workshops where you spent the whole weekend up until like midnight or whenever it ended, and you just it was very intense and very like in your face, and it was hard to ignore some of the messages even though some of them weren't so positive and I really wanted to ignore them. So I had to really ground myself in the fact that this was in my best interest even though it didn't feel good. So love to hear a little bit. And
Yeah.
we both have spent a little time in politics. I was on the school board. I know you were a senator, and so maybe talk a little bit about that part of your life.
Yeah. Sure. Well, what is so funny, Bill, is that so I didn't do Est, I did Eris.
Okay.
If you remember Bob Trask and Eris, his book Look at Living Free, and I jumped in. I was with you. I was doing the all of the
Yeah.
workshops, all of the levels of workshops, and then I ended up becoming a junior
Oh wow.
facilitator with
Okay.
them. And so that's kind of what started my trajectory then. Um, but in politics, so my lens, I was with my mom when I was 6 years old, walking, canvassing. At that time, we called it bird dogging. And we would be going door to door, getting people to register to vote. Honestly, hopefully Democrat, but we registered it either way. So that taught me early on to be active in my
Mhm.
community. And it was also part of our
Hmm.
spirituality. It was for me, those two are inseparable because the fabric of who you are is embedded in your spirituality. And part of my spirituality is activism. It's irresponsible. I believe it's unethical not to be involved in some way, whether it's just voting or whether it's being really active. And so for me, I was volunteering since I was 6 years old in politics. And so once I moved in to Colorado, I moved in 92 to Colorado. I had been here for a while and had been doing volunteer work, but the trajectory happened when we lost our state Senate candidate, and I was the Senate district chair. So what that means is you find you find the candidates, you help the
Yeah.
volunteers, and do all of that. And we lost the Senate candidate. I was in California because I went back to be with my mom in
Okay.
hospice, and she ended up passing at that time. Came back, and the party asked me to run for
Oh,
office um, to fill the seat. And and they said, no, don't worry about it. You can just be what they call a paper
yeah.
candidate. And so that means you just put your name on the ballot, and if you get elected, you do, but you probably won't, because it was a very heavily conservative. Um, Only one Democrat had been in that um, seat, but not
Uh-huh.
elected. And so, anyway, it happened that I ran for office. I was a single mom at that time, and we walked our butts off. My daughters and I, and we got this whole community together. Total grassroots community work, and we knocked on 30,000
Holy moly,
doors
that's a
just through
lot
the
of doors.
months. Yeah, and especially at the end, because by the time I entered, because I was filling the vacancy, the uh, there was nobody who wanted to run for sure, but there was also nobody who wanted to donate. So it was really hard to get dollars because they're thinking, oh, there's nobody, no Democrat is ever going to win
Huh.
there. So anyway, we ended up. I say we because it was really our community that made this happen. But I won after 3 weeks. It was almost 3 weeks of waiting. We had to do ballot cures and we had to go through this whole process. Anyway, I won by 0.05%.
That-
And so it was basically a vote and a half per precinct. And so when people say my vote doesn't matter, oh yes, it does.
so
I will
was
make
that
proof
like
of it.
10 votes or 12 votes or how, I mean, how many votes was it?
It
Like
was
under,
165.
okay.
I think it was 165, and that's out over 52,000
Wow.
or something like that who voted. So it was I made history. I was the first Democrat ever to be elected, second woman to ever to be in the seat, and what that also said to me was I come from the community.
Yeah.
The community got me here, and so that is also part of my makeup, so to speak. When looking at leadership, I really look at um, ground up, grassroots up, instead of top
Hmm.
down. And I really believe in the collective and the community. So I felt lucky, privileged, all of that, and I ended up serving for 8 years. In Colorado, we have the
Yep.
term limits, so I was termed, and it was a phenomenal, humbling, ego boosting, all of that heavy mess of the political conflicts, the personal conflicts. I was a single mom at that
Right.
time, and it was hard on my daughters. And so it was just a blend of the beauty and the mess and the ugliness and all of it.
Kind of describes politics today.
Yeah.
The beauty, the mess, and the
Yeah.
ugliness. It's all a combination of that. So do you
Yeah.
think,
Yeah, for sure.
did you think, or how did you approach like top down, bottom up type of engagement in your role? Because I understand,
Yeah.
like I too believe that the political structure in and of itself won't really make the changes that we want, and yet as a community member, even as a group, I don't have the same power as an elected official. And so, how did you combine those two with your groundedness in community?
Yeah. I love this question because I love what, so for me, when I did legislation, well, let
Okay.
me back up. I made a commitment to do 2 town halls every single month, listening to my constituents, asking them questions. I'd go to door every summer. Um, and have the town halls. So I'd be listening to what they would
Hmm.
want in legislation, first of all. But then once I did and sponsored a bill, I would create, well, at that time we called them stakeholder groups. Now I call them collaborator and partner groups. I don't like to use the word
Yeah.
stakeholder. And so we would do that. It's a longer process, it's a harder process, and you don't always get what you want in the legislation, but you get what the
Hmm.
community needs or wants, in as much consensus building as possible. But I did that, and because of that, 94% of my bills ended up with bipartisan
Hmm.
support, and 98% of them
Wow,
passed.
that's pretty good track record.
So it really, I felt lucky because of that, but I knew it was because of all of the collaborative process that we went through to get there. And sometimes it would take 2 or 3 years to get one piece of legislation in, but I knew that it was better policy because it had the voice of all of the collaborators, all of the community
Well, and it's
members.
interesting because
Um,
people will say, has the political structure always been this divided? And there are times, just like what you described, where both parties could work together and create something that really did impact the community. It seems like we're pretty far away from that today.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, in my last year in office, I produced a documentary on that, on the collaboration in the political process. How does the legislative process work? So many people don't even know how
Right.
it works, and how to get engaged in it. And so I'll often take that with me and go out and speak in different places and share with them, hey, this is possible. It actually is possible. In fact, I'm still friends with my Republican co-sponsor of that one bill that we ended up passing. So yeah, it is. It's the conflict resolution,
Hmm.
conflict transformation
Hmm.
part of my work. Um, that lens, I believe, that really helps with breaking that divide.
Yeah. So let's jump into that. Like, what did you do when you decided to focus on personal growth, or how did you identify areas in your life that needed change? Was it your own self reflection? Was it feedback? Because a lot of our listeners are on their own journey to personal growth, and a lot of my writings, my books, my approach is really focusing on giving people a skill base or having them think about the mindset that creates limiting outcomes. So I'm just curious from your perspective, how did you approach that in your mid 20s when you decided I'm going to go on this journey of increasing my awareness and shifting patterns of behavior?
Yeah. At first, in my younger years, it was, I thought everybody did it. I thought everybody did this. I thought everybody was going to the personal growth workshops and the EST and the, what was it? Not Mind Spring, but Spring something and
Life spring, I think
Eris.
it was. I
Life
remember that
Spring.
one too.
Yeah. And then
Yep.
Eris and then all of these. And then actually what happened was my first profession, I was a singer and an actor. That was my first
Okay.
profession. And my brother is a musical director and coach. And so we got together and created a workshop called Life Song, and it's a workshop for shower singers, people who have always wanted to sing and never
That's
have,
funny.
people who've only sung in the shower or the car or whatever, and using that as a personal growth
Okay.
mechanism. By the time you come out of the weekend, you're singing in public, you're singing on camera, you're singing with a microphone, completely by yourself on
Okay.
stage. And so that's how it started for me. It was kind of like that oh, doesn't everybody do this? And then after I found out that not everybody does that and not everybody wants to do it, and there are some who are so asleep that they won't ever, do that. And then I realized I became asleep.
Mm,
I became very codependent in my relationship with my husband. I didn't see things, Bill. I was so codependent. I was blind to many behaviors, actually, that was causing not only harm to me but to my children. And that was a really deep, crude awakening for me, just in the last, when was it? Well, the last 15 years, I
yeah.
guess. And so with that, it made another shift for me that, whoa, I need to go to therapy. I need to make restitution, reparations, restore my spiritual side. And so I started to, again, do a resurgence, but for me, of workshops, books, speakers, music that was inspirational for me and reflective for me, and um, a world of mindfulness. So yeah, it was interesting how that turned out. I'm hearing an echo. Are you hearing an echo?
No.
Okay. Okay.
So
Good.
so it sounds
Um,
like that journey took you to different points where you had some growth and then you had some regression and then you had some growth and then you and I think that's part of this whole process is even for me in my journey I've grown and then I've digressed and then I've had patterns that showed up again and I'm like, darn it, I thought I changed that. And so I think
yeah.
for you all listening that is a normal part of the growth process, that we don't just continue on this upward trajectory and never fall back down, so to speak, and realize that, gosh, I did have a blind spot. Or I think that's what I'm hearing from you is I was just so unconscious and so in that moment of codependency, or for me just a lack of consciousness, that I didn't realize it until till like things were out of control and I couldn't not face it any longer. And it sounds like that's a place where you finally got
Yeah.
to, and then you had
Yeah.
to shift. So what did you do in terms of the mindset? Because for those folks who have been following the work that I've been sharing, I've always talked about how when we want to shift a practice, it starts in our mindset, that our mind drives everything. And some people, it's a hard concept to believe that what you're experiencing out here starts up here, because I don't know, it's a whole bunch of reasons. Either they don't believe they're that strong or that intuitive, or in some people, it's if they accept that, then they can't be a victim of what's happening. So just curious about how did you approach that? Because that whole idea of codependency brings its own mindset and practices. And so I'm curious, like, what was your mindset work like? And was it challenging for you to shift out of that thinking that from, I mean, because I've experienced it myself and seen people in codependency. And so, how'd you approach that?
Yeah, I am a follower of Barbara Marx Hubbard's work. If you're familiar with her, and she does a lot of work on evolutionary
Okay.
consciousness, and that is part of my spirituality. Is the human growth potential is limitless, um, and especially when we are aligned with our consciousness and our spirituality. So for me, instead of a contraction or instead of a backslide or regression, what I see that as is using Barbara Marx Hubbard's what do you call that spiral. And what she talks about is this spiral where you are going like this and you're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So your consciousness is expanding and you're growing at the same time up here. So you might have the exact same events that happen to you or similar. But once it happens a few years later, then hopefully your consciousness has
Mm,
expanded and your spiral is a little bit
sure.
bigger as it goes out so that it's not going back to that exact same place, but it's similar to give you the chance to give you that what I call my life curriculum, of, oh, I didn't handle it that well last time. This time I'm going to do this. So, like, peeling the onion idea of deeper work for me, and that's where that codependency awareness, that's where that happened for
Okay.
me,
So,
is I thought, where in the world
let
have I
me see if
been?
I can frame this because, for again, for my listeners, I like them to walk away with something they can do. So, what I heard you say is, as we spiral through our life, we have these opportunities for growth where we can expand our consciousness, and the human growth potential is limitless. And so when I go through an experience at this part of my spiral, I might open a third of my consciousness to it or my awareness to it and then make a change. And then as I go through my life, and I might hit it again at this point of my spiral, and then I might get to half or three-quarter consciousness or another level of, oh gosh, I haven't really cleared my mindset of that thinking, which is
Yeah.
perpetuating the behavior. And then as I continue to do my spiral, it gives me more opportunity to become more aware and grow. So is that basically the human manifestation
Yes.
concept of it? Because I think that's what drove me a lot to this work was I would go to a lot of the workshops that you and I've already talked about, and the presenters would just say, do the work. And I'd say, I'd love to do the work. Can you tell me what it is? And then I would wonder if they're actually doing the work if you can't explain it. And so that's why when I when you bring up a concept like the human growth potential is limitless and the spiral, I understand what you mean, and I want to make sure that the people who are listening realize that the access to this is available to anybody. It's not some special thing
Absolutely.
or a special person. It's for everyone. You
Yeah.
just have to choose to be willing to grow your awareness and do your own work because nobody can do it for you.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure
Yeah.
from a conceptual
Yeah.
perspective that I clarified the manifestation of it in day to day life because I think that's the hardest part of all of this personal growth work is how do I do it most days? Because I know for
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
I don't, I'm not perfect. I don't do it every day. There's some days I just like don't don't mind being
For
mired in the
sure.
muck. I'm just like I'm tired today,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I may
Yeah.
not go out
Yeah.
as much or interact with as many people because I know my mindset
Yeah.
is going to be just a little bit unconscious. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure I got
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's a really great,
So we,
also that's a really great reframe on regression and digression. So it's not so much that we're going backwards or failed at some place. We're just really still on that trajectory of the spiral and growing at different points of it.
Yeah, I liken it to when you read a book you really enjoy, and then you pick it up 10
Mm-hmm.
years later and you reread it, and you see so many
Mm-hmm.
other things in it that you never really saw before. I liken it to
Yeah,
that it's kind of like, yeah, of course. Oh,
that's
wow.
like the Four Agreements for me. I read it
Yes,
when I
yes,
was
yes, yes.
like out of high school, and then I've read it at other points in my life, and I get more out of it and understand more of the concepts of it. So, yeah, that
Mhm,
makes sense.
yeah.
So, do you have any like daily habits, rituals, or routines that are really important for your personal development and growth?
Oh yeah, I have so many of them. One that has been a really strong, stable one that I have done. I don't know, decades. I don't know, 4 decades
Right.
probably. Um, I do the gratitude at the end of the day when I am lying down. I know some people do a gratitude journal. For me, I when I'm lying down and I'm ready to go to sleep, I do a gratitude process of what am I grateful for that day. Um, what did that teach me? What gifts did I receive from
Mhm.
it? What is it that I'm really grateful for? That helps me start to go to sleep because, and I realize that if I don't do that, then I've got that little angst in my
Mhm.
brain as I put my head on my pillow. So that alone has been really helpful for me. Um, Another one so I call it mind flipping, which is a concept that I used in Lifesong, where the same thing happens in your body physiologically with fear and excitement. So your body responds, the neurobiology of my brain is interpreting this as fear and my brain is interpreting this as excitement. It's the exact same thing that happens. Your body gets all electrically charged. You might get a knot in your stomach or pressure on your chest, wherever that is, for a person. But it's how our mind
Mm.
interprets it. And so when you are in a space of potential fear, like the example in Lifestyle was singing, that, oh my gosh, I'm so afraid to sing. As soon as you're saying that into your consciousness and you're naming it, that starts to become reality for your
Right.
body. And so if you mind flip it into, wait a second, I'm so excited to sing, then your brain interprets it as
Mhm.
excitement, and then your mindset can change so
Yeah.
much. That to me, that is the power of words in reality.
Yeah, and another one that I've practiced and heard too is shifting from "I have to "I choose to," or "I get
Yeah.
to," and it's a whole different it's a whole different feeling because I think to your point, the "I have to" creates some angst or pressure, where "I choose to" or "I want to" makes it your choice, and it's that same energetic feeling, but one we label fear, to your point, I think is what you're saying, and the other one we label as exciting because I'm excited about my choices. I get more fearful when I think I have to do something. So that
For sure.
mind flipping or reframing, whatever you want to call it, is really important because our words matter, and they are connected to, I think, physiological and emotional changes in
Mhm.
our spiritual being. And so for those of you listening, keep track of the words that you're telling yourself because those are also connected to the impacts that you're having in your life and the outcomes that you're seeing. So,
Yeah. There is one, for me, there's one caveat that I've learned since in going to seminary and doing chaplaincy training, and
Yeah.
that has really helped me with sitting in the mess, sitting in the
Yeah.
shit, sitting in the mire you were
Yeah.
talking about. Sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes you can't mind flip. Sometimes you have to just sit and acknowledge this is what it is, what it is, what it is. This is
Yeah.
reality, or my perceived reality right now. Or you know what? This fucking sucks. My mom is about to die of
Right.
cancer, and this is
Yeah.
shitty. There's no way of getting
Right.
around it. And so if we try to mind flip it too soon, we're just trying to do it. We're just doing a mind game with ourselves and repressing those emotions that will somehow pop out later
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
inappropriate or irrelevant times. And so that's the one thing that I've learned, that yes, mind flipping is fantastic. And there are times when you need to sit
Yeah.
with it and really be in it in order to get to the other
Yeah.
side. Like the birth of pain, I mean, the labor pains that you have to go through. You got to go through labor pains in order to get to the other side and have that beautiful baby.
And as a
If it
man, I
doesn't
will
make
never know what that experience is like. So I have to admit that.
yeah,
And what
yep,
I'm getting,
yep,
which I believe also, is that if you do it too soon, it's performative and you're going to have to go back there anyway. And I also frame it as, how comfortable are you sitting in the fire of yours and somebody else's emotions? Because sometimes you just got to sit
yeah,
in the fire and feel the heat and really just embellish and embrace it and let it surround you. And then there'll be a point where I think intuitively people will say, okay, I've got it. It's kind of like the grieving process. Like when my sister died when I was 13, I never really went through that. So I grieved for years and years and years until I finally figured out I just need to sit in that and feel what it feels like to lose somebody who was really close to me, and 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 experience it. I just wanted to push all of those emotions away because they were so heavy. And
yeah, yeah. And you and I know in doing conflict work that sometimes you have to sit
yeah,
in silence with other people's stuff, and it's
yeah,
very humbling. And as a chaplain, when I was in my internship, oh my gosh, sitting with conflict or sitting with hard news that people were getting. Um, but I am not I work at, I play with, not being a code, I'm not being a conflict
yeah,
avoidant anymore, but more of an embracing kind of feeling of conflict, that I can do this, and I have to, and I have to sit in
hmm
it if I'm going to
hmm
do it.
So what advice would you give somebody who feels stuck or they don't know where to start on their own journey of personal growth?
Mm. Um, I think really the stop, stop stop the chaos, stop the train of all of this mind chatter. Just stop your actions, your current actions. If it takes you to go to a silent retreat, or if it takes you needing to having times of silence and reflection and journaling to listen, because you cannot listen until you stop. There's so many people, especially now in our capitalistic society, that we have to be producers, we have to constantly be active and produce. If we don't get off that train, we can't hear
Yeah,
our inner voice. We can't hear any divine interventions that is trying to come through. We can't hear that. And so I'd say, first of all, just stop And if that needs to be done every night for a week, a month, a couple of months, whatever that is, if it's all in one weekend. But stopping first and then listening. There are so many of us in self growth work that will go out and we'll try to find all of these gurus, and we'll try to find the next biggest guru on TikTok or on Instagram or whatever. And no, it's within
Yeah.
you. It's within your own inner voice. And you can't hear that when you're just doing the ba, 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 ba in your
Yeah.
head. So I'd absolutely, for me, just stopping, sitting in it, listening, whether that's writing, what do you call that, video diary
Mm-hmm.
too. You do, but not inhaling at warp speed books that are self help books. You got to wait first and listen, and then it'll tell you which are the books, who should I be listening to and who should I not be listening to
Yeah.
anymore. And that's the other thing, is shutting out what hasn't worked for you. If something you've done for years hasn't worked for you, maybe that's an opportunity for growth, that you need to be listening to something
Yeah,
else
and it's
or somebody
amazing to me
else.
how people go to whatever Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and there's literally thousands of people who are selling instant growth. All you have to do is do this. Oh, and it only costs you $500 to watch my videos. And I'm just like that's not the way to approach it. There's not any one person that has the answer, because this whole idea of growth is a process, and every single person has a different life experience to come to terms with. And I think the growth process is not dissimilar in that for all of us as human beings, it starts with our mindset and thinking about how the language that we're using up here results in the experiences that we have out here. And and we can't create a new practice without shifting the mindset that supported the old one. And so, because our our behavior will default to the old mindset. And so for me, I've had to shift my thinking before I could shift my practice. And so I would say the same thing I'm hearing you say is stop looking for the answer on the internet, because it's not there. It's within you. And
Right.
so many people are uncomfortable with just being quiet or reflecting inward. And then the other piece I hear is, well, I just don't have time for this. I say, so you have time to have a miserable life where you're in conflict and you're not happy, and you don't have time to figure out how to move through that, so you don't have to keep experiencing that which causes you harm or causes somebody else harm and inhibits your ability to be your most authentic self. So, like, even that logically doesn't make any sense to me,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
all we have is time, and I'm going to either spend my time in the muck forever, or I'm going to spend my time in the muck and then figuring out what do I want beyond that. So,
Well, and time is an
yeah,
illusion, right? I mean, it's like time management. You can't ever manage time. You can only manage priority. Uh, I love that, Bill, because you cannot regenerate unless you are out of the mire,
right.
out of the. It's just that noise. We get so used to that noise, and if we can get out of that, sure, that's great, but you've got to get into the silence and it's time
Mhm.
saving, because of all of the energy, the angst, all of the anxiety that we're walking around with about this one person that I have a conflict with all day
Mhm.
long. And this is what I'm thinking about all day long. That's not taking up time.
Right.
That's taking up a lot of energy. And so if you hit it head on, then you
Yeah.
move through it.
And I think a lot of people, like even when I started this, the silence gave me time to start to think about all of the craziness that I was doing and experiencing. And that was hard at first. And then it got less challenging because I learned to grow from it. I could say, well, okay, so I don't want to do this anymore. And I realized that that's part of it. And so that's kind of this idea of how do we keep evolving and improving as we move forward. So we could probably spend all day talking about topics, but I want
Yeah.
to see if we can come to a close and just ask you, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners about your personal growth journey?
Mm. Um, I will never stop growing. I am a lifelong learner. I'm a believer in that. I believe that the minute we stop learning, we're ready to die,
Mm-hmm.
or sometimes we're the walking
Mm-hmm.
dead. And so, if I were to say anything to anybody about personal growth, it would be listening, stopping, listening, and trusting. That's hard. That's really hard to do the self trust thing. But after you do it and do it and do it, or attempt to do it and do it and do it, it does grow on you, and you start to build that trust. Um, yeah, it's. I don't ever want to stop making mistakes, because that would mean that I'm dead.
Yeah. And I agree with that. I think
And
it's like I do my best to learn something new every day. Because if I learn something new, then I'm growing. And I have this saying, which I still believe is to live up or die. Because, like you, I feel like if I'm not living up or living into my potential, then there's a part of me that is dying. And I don't want, I want to be really as full and as authentic as I can be. And so I think that's great advice to give to people as well, to just think about where's your life versus what parts of you are you losing. So I know you're doing a lot of
yeah,
interesting things in your coaching and all of that. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about what you're doing, how to follow your work, your website, coaching, things that you're up to right
sure.
now.
Yeah, I'm very excited about in fact, I pinch myself sometimes just I feel so lucky for the work that I do. Um, I do a lot of work in conflict, so conflict coaching, conflict facilitation. And then I also help organizations set up systems for conflict. And I don't mean to do
Right.
conflict, but to either prevent or work with conflict, because it will always show up somewhere. We're humans. And so I help organizations set up those kinds of systems. And then I also do, before the Senate, I was doing HR and learning and development and organizational development work. And so I work with organizations in how to decolonize and their HR systems, their learning systems, their people systems. And then I work with restorative practices in restorative justice, transformative justice, work in policy, and then do a little bit of the life
Mhm.
coaching that I love to do, because that's holistic, um, and so it ebbs and flows, and I'll notice that sometimes I'm really focused on this area, and sometimes I'm focused on whatever it is, it's showing up, and I feel really lucky
Okay.
to do it. I also work with Equity Labs. I'm a facilitator and writer with them. So they're at DU. So I do work in the DEIJ
Great.
space as well.
How do people find you?
Um, Oh, thank you. So my website is lindanewell.org, and that's LindaNewell.org. My Archive Senate website is not, it's not up right now. I'm having problems with it. But I'm on Instagram, Facebook. Um, I I'm not good at social media, but I'm
Okay,
there.
great. Well, it's been a real treat having this conversation, and really appreciate you spending some time with me and with our listeners today. And just really grateful to have you share your story and be vulnerable and open and sharing with our listeners ways to keep moving forward and to stay on your own personal growth journey. So thank you for being our guest today. I really look forward, and I'm sure that we will be back on our podcast talking about, maybe we'll do a whole episode just on conflict transformation, because I think that's really, uh,
Oh,
really an impactful
yes.
topic these days on our whole planet. So
It
any
really
last
is.
words you want to share?
I just want to say thank you, Bill. When I first talked with you, I really resonated with you and the work that you do, and thank you for your
Yeah,
leadership in
yeah.
that too.
So you've been listening to the Origination Point, and if you resonate with this work, you can subscribe, share, put on your social media. We have a free app spelled, it's called Connected, and it's spelled CNCTD. And you can subscribe to that and be connected to a community of people who are wanting to do this work, have these conversations. I have two books that I've published. One is called Finding the Origination Point, Understanding Our Biases to Create a More Peaceful World, which is a process to become aware and deconstruct biases so they lose the power that they have when you're interacting with people that you have a bias towards. And the second book is connected to a lot of what Linda and I have been talking about today is mindsets. It's called Flipping Failure, Personal Transformation Process. And it's about how you take a limiting narrative or a limiting mindset that's getting you limited outcomes and turning it in to a growth mindset. And it's really designed as a workbook. They're both available on Amazon. So if that interests you, our website is De La Cruz Leadership Solutions, and you can follow us on all the social media. And really grateful for all of you who are listening and share and subscribe to our approach to personal growth. And just as a reminder to everybody out there, keep growing. Take care.